So why is willpower a poor friend to lean on? And why are pre-commitments a much better friend to make on your recovery journey? Today, this is our subject on finding traction. Welcome aboard.
Guys ready?
When it comes to porn, are you stuck, spinning out, or slipping backwards in your life? If so, then welcome to the Finding Traction podcast, a show dedicated to those who are looking to gain recovery momentum away from porn and toward the life and relationships they have always hoped for. Now, here's your host, Vern Tomke.
Well, hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Finding Traction podcast. Yes, it's been a long time since my last confession. Mostly kidding on the confession part, but it's been nice to take a chunk of the summer off from writing and recording podcasts. Maybe that's why people do seasons of podcasts, like season 1 and season 2, because you can always say, well, that season's done. Just wait till the next season. So I think I finally figured out why people do that. I've even noticed on late night comedy shows, Jimmy Fallon, Trevor Noah, stuff like that. Even shows like 60 Minutes, the news show, it's like they're showing old episodes all summer long. And I'm going, if I'm thinking to myself, if those guys with big staffs, they're not able to show brand new episodes every week, then I'm not going to feel guilty. So, that's how my self-talk goes. So I feel just fine about my lack of podcasts over the summer. So, but the fall is here. And by the way, it's a good reason to subscribe. Hit subscribe when you're listening to my podcast, because that way the next reason Vern decides for any reason to take a break, then you will just get the next episode when Vern decides to get his act together and put out another podcast. So please hit subscribe, and that way you won't have to worry about when or when not Vern is recording. So let's go back to this whole idea around willpower. And I want to call willpower an unreliable friend. And then afterwards, I want to talk about a better friend to make on your recovery journey. So here's what I've noticed about willpower. Sometimes I feel strong and unwavering. I feel strong, and then when presented with the thought around acting out or even the opportunity to act out, my willpower simply goes, nope, ain't going to happen. Those are the good days. But there's other times when my willpower seems to fail me. It's kind of like I'm strong until I'm not. That's why I think willpower is such an unreliable friend. A tempting clickbait image comes up, and despite a moment's hesitation, you end up clicking on it and you go, oh, I should not have done that. Or you see a show on Netflix and with a provocative title, and you find yourself, scrolling and, through those scenes as fast as possible to see if there's any provocative scenes there. We've all been there. Willpower. Such an unpredictable and unsteady friend. Here's another thing I've noticed about willpower. My likelihood of choosing the wrong path does seem to depend on the frequency of choosing that path before. So, for example, if I'm in the habit of checking out arousing material, the minute that my wife, she leaves the house, well, it's probably not surprising that the next time an opportunity comes up, I'm more likely than not to simply have a very limited willpower in that area. So it's kind of like the less I've been choosing the right path, the less reliable willpower is. Now, if I have a good track record around engaging my willpower, it seems to increase the chance of me choosing the right path the next time. If I'm on a good roll and there's a good sense of momentum, it's more likely than not that I'm going to make the next right choice. And, and that's really good news at one level. But even on my best days and my best version of my track record, here's what I've noticed. My friend, Mr. Willpower, is never completely 100% reliable. So despite my great track record of weeks or months or even years of sobriety, it could still fail me at the most unexpected of times. See, I think a wise person knows that. Sure, my willpower may be there 95% of the time, maybe 98% of the time, or even 99% of the time. But that 5 or 2 or 1% of the time when it's not there is going to come with a real punch in the gut. Many of us know even 1% of the time we can't go back there. Our mental health, our relationships, all those parts of our life, we don't have that amount of tolerance or play in the system. We can't go back, even 1% of the time. So what do we do if we don't want to live with this level of uncertainty? If we don't want to have to rely that our willpower will be there the next time the opportunity or the idea comes along? See, this is where I want to introduce to you a simple tool called Precommitments come in to further safeguard our safety in our life and surroundings. So, what are precommitments? Well, precommitments are practical ways of animating our willpower. They're ways of doing that in advance of the place where we need to use it. Perhaps they even remove the need for us to rely on willpower at all. In other words, we're tailoring our environment in such a way that we make these decisions in advance. I got to thinking about this in a podcast that one of the guys I'm coaching who sent me. He struggled in his recovery with drinking, and he listened to this podcast from The Guardian, and it was this whole cross addiction of alcohol and unmanageable drinking, and the journalist who wrote the podcast or who narrated it was called William Leith. It's from the Manchester, and the podcast was called How Drinking Took Over My Life. And this is one insight that he shared from his journey. He said, being sober made me think of chain smokers whose craving disappears on long-haul airline flights. They know they can't possibly smoke, so they just put the whole thing out of their minds. And then he quotes a neuroscientist who says this: Mark Lewis, a neuroscientist and addiction expert, told me it was the same thing as when you put a piece of meat in the fridge and your dog paws at the door, whining and trying to force the door open. But if you convince the dog the door is locked, it will stop whining and walk away. Just think about that for a sec. Now, I know we're not dogs, although I have to confess I've acted dog-like at times with my pawing after sexual stimulation. But this idea helped me connect with the idea of how precommitments can work in our favor and how they can work in our desire to be free from unwanted behaviors like consuming porn. So, let me get super practical and personal with you here. Hopefully that's one of the things you enjoy about my podcast. I tend to be an overshare. But this last summer, 2021, it's been a great summer for me in so many ways. My recovery's gone well. It's been a great summer. I've been coaching most of the summer with different guys. Some guys I coach individually, some I coach in groups. I haven't been teaching, so that's been nice, of course, being the summertime. But I've also, this summer, just because of my environment, been really relationally connected, and that's probably why it's been such a great summer for recovery. For example, my 28-year-old son, because of COVID, had to move back home. So he's always been here, and he works from home too. And so he works from home, and so he's always around. And so that was one just common thing in my environment. The second thing, my wife, who's now a school teacher, an elementary school teacher, she, of course, was home for the summertime as well. So I felt super connected in the house here. Plus, I work from home now by and large. And so I was very connected. And so as a result, guess what? My recovery has gone really well. But this fall, has presented me with new challenges. First of all, my son has moved out of the house, moved to a brand new city, which is great. It's great for him. It's great for his development, great for his career path. But at the same time, he's no longer here. My wife, of course, being a school teacher, has now gone back to the classroom for the start of a brand new school year. So here I am, alone, Monday to Friday. And you would think that me coaching guys online on different days and different times of the day would take away all of my threats. But you would be wrong. Opportunity still knocks. It's a threat for me that requires this tool of pre-commitments. So let me coach myself for a minute, and you can listen in. So Vern, if you're going to act out, even on the spur of the moment, what is the most likely way that you would do it? Well, Coach Vern, one way, I've been thinking about this quite a bit, is I would like to go back on the TV, and I would, for example, like to get on the YouTube app there. I can't seem to get rid of it. Like to get on the YouTube app or open up Netflix and start looking for arousing material. That would probably keep me going for quite a while. And I'm sure I could find some great sexually arousing material. Hopefully I could cover my tracks. Those other suggestions, they can be pesky sometimes, but that's a concern. And so, to be honest, that's what I've been thinking about the most. If I'm going to act out, that's probably how I do it. And so here I am on my own, going into the fall. Coach, we've got a challenge here. So, as I get rid of this one page here. Okay, Vern. Well, what is a practical way that we can get you on the airplane, so to speak, where it's far less likely that you are going to be able to light up your cigarette, and which makes it far more likely that you're going to spend the whole day thinking about lighting up or acting out or looking for arousing material. You see, I have these inner conversations with the coach and me. And then I would say to the coach, well, coach, I have come up with this great idea. You see, I could take, and I've been working on this to impress my coach. I could take all of my remote controls. I've got about 5 or 6 here that can get me on various devices. And I'm going to get one of those devices, that you can put them all in this great lockbox. And I'm going to have my wife, she's going to have the password. And at the end of every day when we're done, before we go to bed, we'll just throw all of them in that lockbox. And then they're all in there. And, they're out of reach, out of mind. So I'm no longer going to be like that dog pawing at the fridge all day. And as a coach, I would probably say to that Vern guy, well, Vern, I think you just might have a solution there. You should try that out. By the way, if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, which I do have, not everyone I know for good reasons does YouTube, but I do have it because I connect with sometimes new people through YouTube, you will see that container. Or if you want to see a great picture of me proudly holding my container filled with all of my remote controls, you can email me at bandofbrothers.care@gmail.com, which would give you a good excuse, by the way, just to get on my mailing list. And not only you see my proud picture there of my new lockbox, but I do send out emails, not as often as I should. I certainly won't be inundating you, but every now and again I have a great thought, which is just every now and again. And I send it to the guys on my email list. So if you want to see that picture, or you just want to connect with me by email, bandofbrothers.care@gmail.com. Now, time for some pushback from yet another version of Vern. Boy, Vern, it sounds like you're really treating yourself like some kind of kid. Well, let me put it this way. I really see there as being at least two versions of myself. You may sound like, boy, you've got to get to see a mental health specialist, but really, I see there being different versions of Vern. There's the one version of the Vern I want to be, and then there's the one that I don't. See, when I put these pre-commitments in place, I'm letting the Vern that I want to be take control of my future and set the agenda, despite how the other version of Vern winds away at the refrigerator. Now, the other pushback from yet another Vern would say, well, that's all fine and dandy, but what happens when you get some trigger or temptation that you didn't plan for? That gets presented to you without any advance warning. And that can happen. We've all experienced being blindsided, where we never expected it. Yes, that can happen, but oftentimes, let's just be practical here, that often's less frequently than we think. Most of the time, we're simply walking out the same tried and true ritual, the old iteration of repeating the same pattern, going to the same device, employing the same methods to look at porn or look at questionable material or edging sort of behaviors, all that kind of stuff. So I think the exceptions to the rule are really exactly that. So that is an example for you of how I use preconditions over and above willpower. Now let me throw in one other example, and this is just a common example of a precondition that many of you guys are using. And I want to just say a couple things about it. Many guys like myself are using Covenant Eyes. It's an online thing that goes on your computer or your telephone. And the version I'm using employs both a blocker and also this communal accountability part that sends reports to 2 or 3 of your recovery buddies. That is another version of a pre-commitment and something I've put in place. So when I'm sitting at home on my computer, and the name of that old porn star comes to mind, it gives me the necessary pause and friction to not simply start searching for something that I know Covenant Eyes is going to trigger. Now, I want to just back up a little bit. There are some guys that is not sufficient for them. And I want to just say, early in my recovery, that wouldn't have been fully sufficient for me. I needed to actually strengthen my pre-commitments even to a further level. Just knowing that someone might look at a report for me actually wasn't sufficient. Either they weren't on the ball, or they weren't that reliable of an accountability partner, or maybe it wouldn't trigger it. It seems to be hit and miss at times. I needed a stronger pre-commitment. Let me tell you what I did for the first couple years of my recovery. For example, Google Images was the bane of my existence. I could not seem to not end up checking out something questionable on Google Images, with or without Safe Search, for example. So here's what I did to strengthen that whole thing. I actually used a different program, one called Net Nanny. I find it was cheaper. I find it actually, in some ways, was more powerful. And I simply created on my blocking list a wildcard star that blocked every single site. Well, that certainly did it. That was my blacklist. That was my block list. And then what I did is I went to my whitelist, and I had to figure all this out because even the people at Covenant Eyes were like, I guess you can do that. But at the time, it was like I know it sounds boastful here. I felt like I was almost teaching them about how the system could work. And then I created a whitelist. And the whitelist were only those few sites that I felt safe in going to. So, for example, I had my banking site. I had the weather site. I had my news site. It wasn't one of those aggregate sites that had all sorts of questionable material. It was a safe news site. And of course, I had my football site because that was, necessary to have. But that was ratcheting it up to a point where my pre-commitments matched my level of vulnerability. So to summarize, you can depend on willpower or you can depend on pre-commitments. You can see the direction that I've gone. And I'm not at all embarrassed to talk about this. I'm not embarrassed to show people what I do. I take pictures of what I do because that's just the reality of who I am and what my life has looked like. So, again, I'd love to connect with you. If you're looking for coaching or you just want to come on and do a one-time sort of Zoom call with me and ask some questions, let me know, bandofbrothers.care@gmail.com. By the way, I'm reserving my Saturday morning time slot kind of as an open slot for any guys that want to kind of come into a new group we're forming. So I'd love to hear from you as the excavator starts up next door. It's a good time to end. And so until next time, here's to finding traction and here's towards the life and relationships you're looking for. God bless.